I just made myself a cup of Inca. It's basically fake coffee from Poland. Or at least I think it's Polish because that's where I've always gotten it from. And it's always been Polish packaging ever since my family started liking it. I like it. I just think I kind of like the taste. I'm not actually a big coffee drinker. So I don't drink it to replace coffee or anything. I just drink it because I just kind of grown accustomed to the taste, I guess. It's much nicer with sugar, although there's no sugar in that because I'm currently not adding sugar to my teas and whatnot, sadly. Funnily enough, today, twice, something that I was doing, suddenly I noticed it was related to the topic of this video. And to be fair, I hadn't actually planned to do this video before today. It just kind of was a thought that appeared. I realized I had free time. And I was like, well, there's a few other things I could do, but to be honest, I could do this. I could record another video. It's been long enough, that's for sure. So I decided, okay, let's set up for this video. So, I get my phone out, which was actually not what I recorded on last time. I recorded on I had like a little off-brand GoPro that I used, if I remember correctly. And I just sort of balanced it on some books somewhere on a chair, probably. This time, I'm using a handy Amazon Basics tripod and my own phone, so that's a nice addition. Although, funnily enough, it actually was still finicky trying to get it all set up. And I have a nice little mini ring light here as well, so that's nice. Still the same microphone. This time recording on my laptop. Although, yeah, last time it was on my old computer. Anyway, stuff aside. Basically, the point is, it was quite a bit of hassle to get all this set up, and I was thinking to myself as I did all of this, I was like, is there much point? Why am I going to all of this effort just to record a video, years after uploading the first one? And I suppose I don't really have a full-on answer for it. Mainly, well, I had the idea to come back to this channel, for the past couple months, maybe even longer than that possibly, but the last 2 months maybe. And I was thinking, oh, you know what, I should probably get back to that actually, upload every now and then, because that'd be kind of nice, especially when I came back to the channel just randomly on a whim, and I saw that someone had commented on my last video. So I was like, ooh, wow, someone actually came across it. And they were very positive and complimentary. So I was like, well, okay, let's see if I can maybe sort of upload every now and then, so I've got something more on this channel. Because to be fair, I did quite enjoy the last video I made, and I, what's not to love about just a random dude yapping on camera for like 20 minutes. But the point is that it was a bunch of hassle to set up the stuff for this video, and yet here I am recording it anyway. At least I hope so. Probably going to check that it's actually recording on the phone right now. Okay, well, it is all recording, so that's good. But anyway, yeah, so that's just an example. So it was hassle, a bunch of effort to get something done. The benefit of doing that thing was somewhat, whether it would be positive or beneficial or not, it was somewhat nebulous. But I still ended up doing it, because here I am. And funnily enough, another thing happened this morning. So I had an online university seminar at about 9:30 in the morning. And I set an alarm for about 8. I rarely ever get up right when my alarm turns on, because I'm a sleepy, lazy boy, and I lie in a lot. But the point is, 8 o'clock, woke up, turned off alarm, went back to sleep because I have 2 more alarms on my phone. And then, second alarm, third alarm goes off, okay. And then I'm like semi-awake, lying in bed. I was like, oh, I'll just lie in bed for a bit. I go back to sleep, just as you would, lying in bed, all cozy and warm. And then I wake up at about 9:15. I've got 15 minutes before my online seminar begins. And there was a moment that just flashed across my mind where I thought, well, can I be bothered? I could skip this seminar, But in the end, got out of bed, had a very quick shower. I was late to my seminar, about 20 minutes, because I, needed a shower, dress, all that kind of stuff. Open up the reading for that particular seminar, so I had it ready on my laptop. Because actually I had done all of the reading for that seminar the day before, so I was up to date. I had points I could possibly contribute to the discussion. But the point was that lying there in bed, all warm and cozy, it was very tempting just to, just leave it, just stay in bed, And for me, I mean, I love being in bed. I love being nice, warm and cozy, I'm a lazy guy. But the point is that in the end, I still decided to, get out of bed, do the thing, despite the, internal objections. So that happened twice today, and funnily enough, those are both quite relevant to the topic of this video. And the topic of this video is one I wanted to talk about for a while, since I started considering coming back to this channel. But essentially, what I wanted to talk about was essentially why bother with anything, And I'm not going to get into like nihilism and all that kind of thing, because I'm not really a philosopher. I mean, I enjoy parts of it. Well, I think I enjoy it as a whole, but the point is that I'm not trained to talk like that, so I'm not going to attempt it. But it's a thought I've been thinking about in relation to motivation and discipline and why I do things in my life, and the consequences of them. And I just think it would be interesting to consider the reasons people have for bothering with anything. Obviously for some people it's a matter of faith and religion. For some people it's just pure sort of duty, maybe in the sense of work or family. Other people, they follow their own sort of philosophy. Some people, they don't really think about it at all. To be frank, I guess most people don't think about it at all, why they do what they do, the point of it all. Well, no doubt sometimes they think about it. I don't mean they don't think about it at all. I'm just referring to, in everyday life, how often in a day do you stop and think of the reasons for why you're doing what you're doing? I know I don't do it that often. It's just an interesting point. Although that's not really a point I just made, that's more of an observation. But anyway, and I would like to look at the reasons for bothering with anything, whether that's doing a simple task, like maybe doing your laundry, or whether it's something like attending an online seminar in the morning when you're already, when you've only got 15 minutes to get ready and you're, cozy in bed, and there will be limited repercussions for not, fulfilling that obligation. Or whether it's, going to work in the morning, or whether it's looking after your family, or even, attempting to pursue a family, or attempting to pursue any kind of sort of meaningful vocation in life. Why would you bother with any of that? And, also the people who don't think they have any reason to bother, people who have fallen back into sort of a dark pit of despair and depression, people who don't see or the value in continuing on, or perhaps they see the value in it but they don't think it applies to themselves. It's something that I've thought about sort of irregularly recently, and for me, my own personal reasons for bothering with anything, they're quite solid. I won't go into them in this video. Perhaps that'll be another one. But the thing is, people who don't see a point in sort of, committing to life, as vague a phrase as that is, I feel that they miss so many of the immediately obvious reasons why, it might not even like without a doubt, but in the sense of why it might be worth, pushing on whatever kind of difficulties you're currently coming across. The first one, which, is something that, I do always try to appreciate, is just the natural world. I mean, sure, the natural world can be scary and very dangerous. That's not really the case for me, because I live in England, and the countryside here, and in principle, the natural world here is pretty tame compared to some other places of the world. You don't get hurricanes, you don't get tsunamis or volcanoes. We don't have dangerous wild creatures that could kill you. Well, I guess arguably maybe a squirrel with rabies could bite you or something, or a fox or a badger. Like it's not like there aren't any animals in the UK that could possibly harm you, but nothing in the sense that you could get elsewhere in the world, But when I speak of the natural world, I don't just speak of, you know, the animals. Obviously, I'm talking about the landscape, the grass, the trees, you know, mountains, the sun. I mean, the sky in of itself is such a beautiful thing. I mean, of course, again, living in the UK, to be fair, it's perhaps slightly ironic that I'm saying this, because as I look outside right now, the sky's quite grey. But even that has kind of a funny beauty in it when you look at the sky with objects in front of it. You know, I mean, right now, looking out of my window, I see 2 trees. Well, more than 2 trees, but 2 trees with leaves on. So I'm assuming they're coniferous trees, you know, the ones who don't lose their leaves in winter. And then between them, there's a house, and behind that house, there's another tree, but that one is leafless. And just the contrast of the green and the green of the 2 trees with leaves, and then the sort of, not black, but the dark sort of spindly outline of the tree in the middle against the grey sky. Although it's more of it's not white, but you know that sort of whitish grey thing you get on like a overcast day. I mean, that in of itself, like it doesn't look completely unpleasant. It's not the most beautiful thing, you know, in nature, but it's something. I suppose that's what I'm trying to get at when it comes to talking about the beauty of nature. I mean, even things that maybe aren't so, you know, wonderful to look at first glance, you can kind of learn to appreciate small parts of it that are quite nice to look at. You know, I mean, I don't like rainy days really, but it's nice, to be fair, it's nice to sit inside during the rain and hear it, you know, outside. It kind of makes me feel cozier. I have the same sort of opinion of thunderstorms. And even sometimes being in the rain can be okay if you have an umbrella or something, and just, you know, hearing it hit the umbrella, and, you know, the smell in the air when you have like a fresh rainfall, that's quite nice as well. I mean, for me, the peak natural beauty sort of thing would be the sun, you know, a sunset or a sunrise. Those are wonderful because of the colours that they sort of, you know, bring up in the sky. And to be fair, I mean, I don't know what it's like where other people live, but here in the UK, you get a fair share of wild animals. You get squirrels, you get loads of birds, you know. I feel so lucky whenever I see like a hedgehog in the evening, like walking along. You know, sometimes you see foxes and whatnot, but just seeing like these whimsical little creatures. I mean, it's you know, for me, it's quite uplifting. And, you know, just the natural world in of itself, where I am at least, it holds so many riches. And I think even though the natural world can look so different in so many other places, that sort of inherent beauty you find in nature, it's there, I think, most places you go. Think about it, even the bleakness of a desert can be beautiful in its own way, you know. And that's sort of a twofold kind of meaning, because you have places like the Sahara. I mean, imagine the blue sky against the golden of the sand, you know? Well, golden of the sand, gold of the sand. You get the picture. And then you've got places like Antarctica with those great, huge expanses of white snow and ice. I mean, that's nice. I mean, they're not the most hospitable environments, but visually, you know, they look very beautiful. Of course, that isn't to say that I think the natural world is the main reason you should bother with life. It's just one of the many reasons. And if anything, I'd argue it's one of the sort of background reasons, if that makes any sense. It shouldn't be the primary reason. But the point is that it's a reason, and it can help you when you're going through tough stuff. Especially because the natural world is something sort of external to yourself. It's there regardless what you do, typically. So to have that kind of consistency, it can be quite comforting in a way. So of course the natural world is one reason why, you know, it's worth bothering to get up out of bed in the morning, because, you know, because there's beauty out there to witness in the natural world. There are things in it to be enjoyed. And I'm not saying that, you know, the main reason you should get out of bed is to enjoy yourself. That's not what I'm saying. That's not exactly what I'm trying to get at here. What I'm doing by kind of pointing out one of the reasons to get out of bed in the morning, I'm more so trying to point out that these things you can enjoy can be a sort of consolation, or a reward for the suffering and struggle that you go through in your life. And the fact is, the natural world is always there. You don't have to pay for it. I mean, granted, you do have to pay for it in some places of the world if you want to, like, go to like a some park or something, or if you want to go on holiday somewhere. But my point is that even in the most urban of cities, you've got pigeons. You know, there's something there, and you've literally got the sky. The sky is always there. You know, the sky and the clouds. So it's something that's constant in that kind of way at the moment. Ultimately, all things are temporary, so even the natural world is gonna, you know, pass away at some point. But, you know, there's no point worrying about that. There really isn't. But people are also such a big reason to get out of bed in the morning. You know, the relationships you can have with them, you know, friends, family, you know, romantic relationships. You know, just a good friendship can do so much for you. You know, a genuine good friendship where the two of you, you know, you appreciate the other person and you genuinely, well, you love the other person, but platonically. You appreciate them for the human individual they are, and you sort of recognize that inherent dignity in them as a human. And they do the same for you, and you kind of have that level of understanding between you. And it's someone who you can sort of open your heart to a degree. That's another form of beauty. It's, you know, but if you never got out of bed in the morning, if you never leave the house, then that's just not going to happen, you know? And of course you can make friendships online and whatnot, but it's never the same. And ultimately those online friendships, they'll only really come to their full fruition, I think, if if it comes to actually meeting that person in reality. Because even on a video call, you don't get the full scope of a person's personality and then, you know, their quirks and their turns of phrase, yeah, because you can hear them speaking. But if you understand what I'm saying, you don't get that face-to-face level of quality, I think, in that kind of relationship. You know, there's a reason why long-distance couples, you call it a long-distance relationship. You call it a long-distance relationship because you're aware of that huge physical void between the two of you, and it hurts. It's not a situation you would necessarily desire to be in, and that's why it makes those moments where you do perhaps meet up so much more special, because because it's not a frequent thing. So in a way, I suppose those sort of relationships can be good because they kind of show you and teach you to appreciate genuine human contact, you know. But at the same time, they're not ideal. They're not efficient. I don't know if efficient is the right word to use, but that's the sort of idea I'm getting. And people bring with them, of course, their own set of, you know, problems and stresses and, you know, sufferings of themselves. But the point is that, like I said, the reason to get out of bed in the morning isn't just to enjoy yourself. Like, you're going to suffer. You're going to go through tough things. But the point is that those tough things, those sufferings don't have to just be that, just suffering. You know, you can have consolations. You can have meaning through that suffering. If you look at the Christian view of suffering, that's a wonderful thing. The fact that your suffering can have meaning. And you see that all the time in, good happy families, with the parents, like, obviously looking after children, raising children, feeding them, disciplining them, all of that, their extra stresses. It's not easy being a parent. It's not easy being a human being, but the point is that when you sort of fulfill those responsibilities, with genuine love and affection, then it gives back to you. You don't just suffer and work, full stop. There's a reward in it for you. And the best part is that's not even like not the immediate reward, but there's the immediate sort of gratification you would get from looking after a child, and then you have further gratification as you see them grow up. So it's a bittersweet one. It's poignant because there's always a sadness in, that, because you sort of start to but you observe the passage of time and how things aren't going to last forever. But my point is essentially that anything worth doing is going to have a level of suffering and difficulty with it. And yeah, it sucks, and yeah, it's rough. But if you stay strong and commit to it and get through it in the end, then it's always worth it. Even your failures are worth it. That's my experience, at least. Every time I failed at something or perceived myself to have failed, it's sucked short term. I've been disappointed, I've been angry, I've been bitter about some things. But something that always helps me is to look at these things objectively. And I know some people don't like that term, objective, the idea of objective truth, objective beauty, but it's something I certainly do hold to wholeheartedly, because it makes so much sense, and I think it really helps when it comes to viewing your own actions and your own life. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, I'd get into some kind of argument with my mum, I'd misbehave, or she'd tell me off or something, and I would cry, and I'd run to my room and shut the door, and I'd go sit on my bed or lie on my bed and cry for a bit. But then I would think about it. I would think about what it was that I just did. I would think about why I did it, and I would think about my mother's reaction to it. And more often than not, I would come to the conclusion that my mother was in the right. It's just that was my emotional response was just that. It was just an emotional response. It wasn't logical. It wasn't correct. Now it's not wrong in the sense for a child to react that way because they're a child. But the point is that even as a kid, I would try and look at things objectively and logically. I'm like, well, okay, I did this. That technically was wrong. So this garnered that reaction from my mum, who then did this, and that upset me because I didn't like that. But the fact that I did this thing at the beginning kind of, shows that it was my own fault anyway, It's just that ability to kind of step back and objectively look at things that helps, I think. Right, so what have I spoken about? I've talked about, why bother getting out of bed in the morning. I've given, examples of like natural beauty, friendships with people, relationships with people, the point of doing something worthwhile and how that, it will bring suffering, but it will also bring great reward. And it feels weird for this because I don't want to inject too much of my own, that's kind of ironic. I mean, I guess these videos are sort of me injecting my own viewpoint and my own feelings on certain topics, but I basically don't want to bring in too much of my own faith into this, but the spiritual aspect, you can't ignore it. You honestly can't. Even if you consider yourself to be an atheist, you find you're automatically going to look for something to plug the gap. And I don't mean actively. I don't mean you'll consciously seek for things. You won't be like, oh, okay, well, I'm not religious. I don't have any kind of faith. I'm not spiritual. So I'm going to look for something to sort of fill that void. I'm not saying that's the case. Of course it's not. But I think that human beings innately have a desire for the spiritual. It's why you've got so many religions in the world. It's why you've got, it's why you've got teenage girls on TikTok talking about manifesting stuff and all that thing. It's because the human heart has a desire for the transcendental. They have a desire for things that go beyond this world. We all do. And it's innate in us, I think. Of course, again, coming back to the idea of objective truth, I believe there's only one real truth in that regard. I don't think you can have, several different spiritual outlooks who all preach a kind of different set of truths and, hold them all at the same level of value. I think inevitably only one of them is going to fulfill it completely. But regardless, I'm just saying that why get out of bed in the morning? Well, if you have a spiritual aspect there, that's so much more profound and penetrating than the reasons I've given before. The natural world, the beauty of it, or the beauty of, human relationships. Those things are good. Those things are wonderful. And sometimes, and in fact for me, you feel it more intensely than the spiritual side of things. And in fact you want to engage with that more, And I suppose when I say the natural world the natural world, relationships with people, I mean, food and drink, I mean, that in of themselves, it's such an enjoyable thing sometimes. If you're thirsty, having water, is a pleasant experience. Or a nice biscuit or a slice of cake. These are things that are good, and they do bring great consolation. But my point is that they also bring with them a level of limitation. So they're not going to completely fulfill, your sort of need or for motivation, I guess, or inspiration. It's always the transcendent that leads human beings to doing something really, really worthwhile, I think. I mean, arguably, you see that in, healthy families. The love they have for each other, that love's not a tangible thing. Some people, you might argue, well, love's just, chemicals in the brain, but that's such a reductive view. It's so obviously not, from my perspective at least. And I say my perspective. This isn't all original thoughts from me. This is coming from stuff I've read, stuff I've listened to, stuff I've watched. But, love is so clearly a transcendent thing in the way it shapes us and the way it makes us act. I mean, you have people who, who seemingly have a very strong relationship with the spiritual, and love is always involved there. Not always, but what am I talking about? It is often involved there. I think it should be involved there with my particular faith. But like I was saying, it's the transcendent that really fills that desire you have in your heart for a reason to live. And I don't mean an explanation for why you're alive in the first place, for why things exist. But I'm talking about a reason, like a motive, something that really holds your resolve together in the sense that it gives you the energy and sort of the presence of mind, I guess, to live your life, not just to exist. I don't know if that makes any sense, maybe not, but that's the kind of point I was trying to get at. So why bother? There are nice things in this world. There are nice people in this world. There will be suffering. There will always be. And things can suck a lot of the time, and things can suck for a very long time, but in the end, there's always going to be some form of consolation that you can find in, the simplest thing. And don't neglect the spiritual side of things. For thousands of years, humanity hasn't just sat around assuming that there isn't, well, not assuming. Humanity hasn't sat around neglecting that part of us. It's something that's always preoccupied us. It's only really in the past few centuries that's something that's become, begun to be doubted, when you've got the so-called Enlightenment, which, to be frank, is kind of a misnamed period when you consider it. Well, when I looked at it, at least. I mean, a lot of good things came out of it, but a lot of bad things too. My point is that there's a reason why for so much of human history and human existence we've attempted to grasp the divine and reach out to it and interact with it, It's because there is something there. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, pursue it. Because if you do, I think you'll find that it will satisfy that desire. And I'm not saying, once you do supposedly pursue this thing or possess it, because it's not something you can possess. I'm not saying then your life will be perfect and everything will be easy. That's not how it works. I'm trying to say it'll keep you going throughout all of it, the good times and the bad. Maybe that's an obvious statement to say, because life is full of, as they say, life is full of ups and downs. It's inevitable. But my point is that the ups will be so much richer and so much more joyous, and the downs will be so much easier. It's not easier, but the bad parts will be so much more meaningful in a good way for you if you have that kind of higher level of motivation, I suppose. Motivation is not really the word I like, but that higher level of I guess meaning, yeah. Anyway, it's probably the most I should really say. I've been rambling for a while, but thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it somewhat edifying and somewhat enjoyable. Who knows when I'll upload next? It's been ages, but I'm glad I did this. I'm hoping you're glad that you chose to watch this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of the points I raised. I'll be more than happy to reply at some point. And hopefully I'll see you all in the next video. So take care of yourself and bye bye.